next 15 minutes, I'll just run through some of the kind of issues in our world. And I think just to kick things off, it's worth just starting off with something I think that we all know very well. Our world of content is going through an amazing phase of growth and evolution at the moment. And over the past decade, we've seen an amazing explosion in the number of new platforms, all chasing this fragmented and mobile audience. And what a lot of these platforms have in common is they're looking for that high quality, must-have content that kind of reaches out to the audiences wherever they are. And it's this quality content that is driving much of these new platform growth as well. And for us as content producers, this opens up a whole new world of opportunity to kind of connect directly with the audiences and engage them as they move between these new platforms and devices. And, it's true to say that at the moment, audiences never have had so many content choices. And, the mediocre is no longer acceptable. And, we have to tell stories that will connect directly to our audiences. And, I think it's really true that, this was said by a Hulu exec at a recent conference that nobody watches crap anymore. I think it's true now more so than ever that faced with so many choices, the viewer has taken control of what they watch and how they watch. And it really impacts upon the kind of content now that they're consuming and also what we're producing for them. So also as well, I think just to kind of emphasize the fact how these content choices are being firmly driven by our consumers, is to highlight some of the structural and technological changes that have impacted on distribution as well. I just want to share with you a few facts and figures just to kind of bring to light some of these structural changes. Firstly, according to a recent US study, 70% of Americans now engage in binge TV viewing, and typically they're watching 5 episodes per session. In the UK, nearly 1/3 of UK adults now describe binge viewing as one of their main hobbies. I know, only the Brits would describe watching TV as a hobby. But what's interesting, actually, if you look at the younger demographics, the 18 to 24-year-olds, over half of them describe binge viewing as one of their main hobbies. So it's really interesting how important video content is across all demographics. The second stat I want to share with you as well is another very interesting stat as well, is that over 1/3 of consumers in the US now subscribe to two or more streaming services, and this is up from 19% just a couple of years ago. So the proliferation of new platforms and the content choices is moving pretty quickly at the moment, and viewers really have amazing choices. It's interesting, in the UK we're seeing similar pattern as well, where nearly a quarter of all viewers now subscribe to 2 or more streaming services. So they're actively consuming content, more and more content, and really in control of that content as well. And I think as well, what's very reassuring for us, it's a third stat I want to share with you as well, is that consumers now spend an extra 1.5 hours watching TV and video content than they did 4 years ago. Like, for us as producers, this is great news. People, despite the rumors, are watching more video content, not necessarily on the TV anymore, but across all kind of different platforms as well. So, it looks like that in this highly kind of fragmenting TV world, viewers are still seeking out long-form, quality content, more complex storytelling, and they really want to take back control of what they're watching. So just to move on as well, it's worth mentioning this technology now enables us to engage with this new global niche and to follow our audiences wherever they are, both in front of the TV screen, on their devices, across all different platforms. And this growth of new platforms and the content that moves onto these new platforms, I think has kind of fueled what we're calling the golden age of drama, both in terms of the quality and the quantity we're seeing as well. And I think it's fair to say that over the past 5 years, TV has really become the new film. And we've seen talent move from the movie world into the TV world, both the on and off screen talent as well. And this quality has also pushed up the cost of drama, and it also means that increasingly large budgets are needed to market your dramas. Particularly if you're on Netflix or on Amazon, marketing becomes a really important part of the spend on drama as well. But also as well, what's worth saying, in this increasingly fragmented world, and you're surrounded by all these niche audiences, the curation and discovery of content becomes very important. For us as producers, it offers a huge opportunity as well to kind of tell different stories that you couldn't tell in the linear world. We can now connect the dots and find that global niche and tell those slightly unusual, different stories that maybe we couldn't before. So it's a great opportunity creatively as well. And our audiences are no longer bound to that kind of weekly 1 hour slot, Sunday 9 o'clock. They can now watch us drama anyhow they want. And this does offer us amazing creative opportunities as well. Obviously, we produce across all platforms like Black Mirror for Netflix, Ripper Street on Amazon, and the Netherlands, and perhaps Iris will talk about this later, we now produce for KPN the telco. And increasingly we find that telcos are becoming increasingly important in terms of what commissioners for content as well. And it's amazing for us, all these new customers just keep appearing all the time. But at the end of the day, for us, it's all about the content, finding that audience, and we will work with whatever platform to kind of find that right audience and connect with them directly. So over the next few slides, I just want to share with you some of the bigger content trends that we're kind of thinking about in the Endemol Shine Group, and starting with kind of a big one, nostalgia and heritage. Nostalgia is certainly something that's cyclical, and I think nostalgia as well also plays very well in kind of uncertain or troubled times. An old idea can come back with a different execution or a new iteration, or kind of connect with a different generation of viewers. It's a very interesting trend, and it's kind of impacting across all of our culture at the moment, I think. Research suggests that, faced with a kind of a world of impersonal digital media, nostalgia works very well with millennials because it connects on a very human level and can humanize brands as well and forge those kind of meaningful connections as well. Also, what's interesting with nostalgia, I read a study from the Journal of Consumer Research that said that when people feel nostalgic, they actually spend more money. So they kind of feel all warm and fluffy and kind of, and spend more money. So obviously from a commercial point of view, nostalgia can work as well. And I think, if you look at, our world of content and what's kind of risen to the top over the past 5 years, it is those big nostalgia brands that often tap into our kind of collected memories from the 80s and the 90s, Westworld, X-Files. Even Pokemon came back last year in a new and different way. Mr. Bean for us. Even Stranger Things, which is not, a heritage title, taps so well into that kind of culture, the nostalgia for the 80s and 90s. So also as well, on a purely commercial level, if you have a brand with an established fan base, it can stand out in a really cluttered environment. So you're bringing a known quantity to your client as well, hopefully with a loyal legion of fans intact. And it's not just drama that's kind of thriving in this new world of choice and multi-platform choice. We're also seeing different models for content distribution and new ways to connect in the non-scripted genre as well. And non-scripted genre is a really important part of our business at Endemol Shine. We obviously make MasterChef, Big Brother, so it's something we think about a lot. And it's interesting to see that, in the same way we've seen with scripted content, we can now see these kind of emerging global non-scripted brands as well, which can play across Hulu or Amazon or Apple Music or Netflix as well. And it's, I think it's a real growth area for us at the moment, looking at how non-scripted works across these new SVOD and OTT platforms. And for us, it kind of changes slightly how we think about global formats. In the past, if we were going to roll out a format like The Money Drop, like a big game show, it might take 5 years to hit 30 markets. If we sell to Netflix, we can hit 190 markets in one go. So it's a slightly different dynamic now, thinking about our content and that global audience. Obviously, also kind of harking back to that known brand nostalgia, the latest iteration of Top Gear is the Grand Tour. Did amazing numbers for Amazon. They haven't released them, but they did say it was the most watched premiere ever, and it also had the dubious honor of being the most illegally downloaded TV show ever, apparently, as well. So, obviously there's a demand for it, and, it taps into this overall kind of feeling for nostalgia too. It's worth mentioning as well that alongside this growth of non-scripted entertainment, factual storytelling over the past 5 years, and probably parallel to the scripted growth, has seen a huge explosion as well. And this genre has adapted very well to the new platforms and does suit the kind of slightly different ways people are consuming content. For example, Making a Murderer, it's a 10-hour documentary, and it's unlikely that would have found a home on linear television, But now, Netflix kind of can package that in such a way where it can find a global audience. That probably wouldn't have worked, on a BBC or on ITV or Channel 4 perhaps over 10 hours, So it's interesting now how there's different type of content coming through, and factual storytelling does work very well, also works very well to binge it as well, particularly if there's a strong storyline as well. But it's not just the high concept factual as well. Increasingly, Factual can be a very cost-effective way of producing content as well and engaging directly with your target demo. Like companies like Vice have made a business out of producing Factual for millennials, and it works very well for them. So Factual is a huge opportunity as well. But not neglecting, those linear audiences. It's worth mentioning as well, back, on traditional television, we're increasingly seeing like big tentpole events and live programming attract large audiences and deliver really significant reach as well. And it's interesting that the same way that we've seen the importance of dramas for those S4 and OTT platforms, linear broadcasters equally are looking for those big channel-defining, tentpole pieces that can deliver, a live primetime audience as well. So, these are some of the big hits from the UK last year. And in fact, in the UK, the top 5 highest rated shows were all non-scripted. So it's very interesting that although drama has seen a huge growth over the past 5 years, certainly on linear television, the non-scripted still works really well as a genre. And also what's interesting as well is that these big non-scripted shows are almost becoming the new sports rights. So something like Bake Off, which we know had transferred from BBC to Channel 4, it becomes part of a bidding war because these are kind of the jewels in the crown now in the TV world to get one of these pieces. So it's interesting now how consumers will follow content, not necessarily channels anymore, and it's a very interesting dynamic and throws up certain possibilities and opportunities for us as well. And also, I think, while we're on this slide, it's worth mentioning that it's really strange how you never ignore the counter trends and those small ideas that get big. Like Bake Off started off a very small baking show on BBC Two and is now the UK's highest rated show with 60 million viewers. So for us as well, we always keep one eye on the cultural zeitgeist and also keep the other eye on those little counter trends which are coming through and what's going on bubbling beneath the surface and spotting those early trends. But also as well, these big entertainment franchises, certainly for us as well, are not just TV shows. They move and permeate across all of our culture. And, we know that great content finds audiences across all platforms and devices. And, both our TV brands and our native content, creates viral opportunities, we create water cooler moments, and we keep viewers engaged and hopefully wanting more of that content across all platforms where they're exposed to. For example, just very quickly, MasterChef, obviously, an amazing TV show, but also the Instagram page, people love taking pictures of food, has over 400 million lifetime views now, which is incredible. So, for us, we have to think about our TV content beyond just being TV shows, but being literally living and breathing content that people want to connect with everywhere they are. And believe it or not, Mr. Bean is now the #1 TV property on Facebook, overtaking The Simpsons and Family Guy, and it has over 68 million likes, which is phenomenal for, a brand like Mr. Bean, and it's one that we look after as well, and we support it and nurture that as well. Obviously, you're going to see some clips later. Big Brother was the most tweeted TV show last year in the UK. It was amazing TV moments. And also on YouTube, Big Brother's amazingly viral content works exceptionally well. And also what's interesting, with all these new platforms, is that content and ideas can now literally come from anywhere. And we're seeing new ways that formats move between different platforms in a more fluid and structured way. And these different format journeys represent a new trend in how global content and format journeys can be created by connecting directly the content with the audience. For example, like one of our formats, Fear Factor, had a huge following on YouTube and has now been recommissioned by MTV in the USA based upon a new generation watching those clips. One of the most successful TV formats of last year, Lip Sync Battle, came from a talk show. Carpool Karaoke, which is a well-told story, obviously is now a fully fledged format which will launch on Apple Music later this year after its amazing success on YouTube. And if you ever look at the numbers on YouTube, they are phenomenal. The Adele YouTube Carpool Karaoke had 150 million views. So, you're creating a format with a ready-made fan base and a legion of viewers as well. So it's quite a clever way of thinking about content. And finally, it works the other way as well. Candy Crush, that classic mobile game, is going to be a fully fledged game show which will launch on CBS in the US this summer. So there's movement now between all platforms in terms of content, and brands can very successfully reinvent themselves, for new audiences as well. And for us as producers, these content cycles are really interesting, and they offer us a new way of telling different types of stories to different types of people. And often, the most successful formats discover that sweet spot of finding that balance between something very familiar and something that's slightly surprising and new. Just, a few examples, like The Voice, the talent genre is a well-worn path, in the TV format world. But, the simple mechanism of the twisty chairs kind of gave a new lease of life to that genre as well. Or, a format like This Time Last Year, which is an ITV show, which had the time travel mechanism for a makeover show. So there's new ways of kind of using technology as well to kind of create the new twists on something very familiar. And for us as well, it's worth mentioning that also iterations of existing formats like MasterChef Junior works very well with us. So take an existing brand and just, with different, with kids, for example, works very well. And finally as well, like a format like Simon's Cat, which, something from the YouTube world is finding new audiences for its different iterations across all platforms. So it's very, for us, never underestimate the familiar and what's gone before. We spend a lot of time looking at cycles and, of formats and what's coming up. Also as well, I think some of the best content ideas often are a fusion of kind of pop culture collisions, and mashing genres together can be another very interesting way of finding, new ways of storytelling and connecting to new audiences. Either by taking two existing shows like we did with 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown, which taking, two very well-known game shows, put them together to create something quite different, or by mixing diverse genres to create something different, like Release the Hounds, which mixes the kind of classic game show with the horror story elements as well to create kind of a new experience as well. And also as well, we're producing a Factual series called The Trial for Channel 4, which mixes real-life actors and kind of a jury as well. So it recreates the murder case. So it gives you a slightly different slant on something familiar. And moving forward, technology, of course, is moving very fast and has a big impact on the types of content that we produce as well. And also, technology can create new viewer experiences. And although we're still very much at the early stages of development, virtual and augmented reality can offer us as content creators amazing creative opportunity to kind of, present a different experience to the viewer. And also, it offers a cost-effective way of producing as well. You can make amazing big experiences using virtual and augmented reality that you couldn't necessarily do in a live show. And this is certainly something we're looking at a lot, how we can use this new technology to push our own creative limits and ultimately enhance the end experience of the viewer. And finally, just to kind of wrap things up, I think, I feel professionally obliged to talk about kind of recent and political cultural shifts, most notably kind of Trump and Brexit. And there's been a lot of talk about, will we see different types of content coming through as a result of this kind of new political and social mood. And, in the aftermath of both Trump and to a lesser extent of Brexit, there's been a lot of talk about, is content being made by cultural elite, in London or on the East Coast? Are we telling the right stories to connect with the viewers? And in terms of future thinking, I think there's a possible of content trends that can come out of this. I think the first kind of thought is, we're going to see more formats which capture the stories of the kind of blue-collar experience. And, this is well-trodden ground for the US cable networks, and they have claimed to be ahead of the curve, like with Duck Dynasty, American Pickers, Pawn Stars, in about understanding, the mid-American audience. And it certainly gives their kind of theory some credence that they are telling stories which connects to the kind of the middle of the country very well. But probably the most likely scenario would be a combination of factors, actually. The general consensus, I think, is that we'll probably see more authentic and genuine non-scripted formats emerge, formats which shed a light on social and political issues like immigration, presenting different cultures and lifestyles, but in new and different ways. Like, how do you tell those stories, that aren't being told in a way that's going to be engaging to a viewer, And the second trend, which always works amazingly well in kind of uncertain times, is just escapism, variety, entertainment, comedy, that leaning back, just getting away from it all, letting it wash over you, and, it's a well-known fact that game shows always do well in recessions, and I think, there's a huge appetite, for entertainment as well, and comedy. But, I think the reality would be a combination of these, but I think it's certainly interesting times, and there's a lot going on in our world. But I think, just to end with one thing that's, I think, for us, as content producers, certain and reassuring is that, audiences will be watching more content and they'll be watching more of it and in more places. Thank you for listening.